So if you've been a video editor or even a programmer or any type of office worker for quite some time, and you find that you've been reaching the mouse a little bit too much, well, I hope this video convinces you that you really need to invest a lot of time and effort into memorizing shortcuts, because it's going to make you a more efficient worker or video editor in the long run. Let's jump into reasons why, and let's see how I set up my keyboard shortcuts. Now, I know you must have heard this a long time before, but let me just really drill this down, that this is it's crucial to your success as a long-term video editor. Let me explain why. So one of the key principles to being a really good programmer, especially if you work professionally, is to have really good knowledge of your keyboard shortcuts in your IDE, which is basically the development editor where you see all your files and whatnot. So not having these keyboard shortcuts, it's really going to make you a slower programmer, and it kind of shows you to look like kind of like a noob, for example, because you really don't want to have to be reaching for the mouse quite often just to do a command. You really want to stay, locked into your keyboard so that you can edit or program as fast as possible. Now, these programming principles don't just apply to video editing, it applies to any type of office work. In fact, it really helps out in video editing because you'll be using your keyboard a lot and you really want to avoid using your mouse. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, the main thing is actually your health. You want to avoid repetitive strain injury. Having carpal tunnel syndrome is no joke, and it can be very painful, especially if you're kind of like awkwardly reaching your mouse and then moving your hand to the keyboard often. So what you want to strive for is to keep your left hand always on the keyboard, on the left side of the keyboard. And you want to keep your right hand on the mouse because yes, we are using our mouse more often than programmers in order to seek the timeline and kind of, see clips and touch clips. Unfortunately, video editing is more visual than programming, so you're definitely going to have to be using your mouse quite a lot. In fact, I made a whole video on how you can be really productive just in general in the office environment using an MMO gaming mouse. Now, this gaming mouse has 12 buttons on the side. You can program to do whatever you want. I don't particularly use it in Adobe Premiere, but I use it in kind of web browsing and surfing the web and actually doing research and stuff like that by rearranging my windows and changing volume and stuff like that. So I made a whole video about that. I'll leave a link in the description. Definitely check it out if you want to improve your productivity using a mouse. So back to actually video editing. Another really important reason why you want to use keyboard shortcuts is to save time and obviously save money, because time is money, right? Well, it's not only just how you save time, it's really about how you context switch. For example, if you want to apply an effect, it would typically take a lot of steps and you would have to move the mouse around, maybe go to click a different panel and stuff like that. Where there's actually keyboard shortcuts and plugins, which I'll talk about a little bit later, to make some of these routine tasks, some things that you just do all the time, really fast and easy. And it really keeps you in that flow state where you're able to edit and not be distracted by having to do some menial tasks, like some repetitive tasks, for example. Now, one of the things a lot of people struggle with, including myself when I first started programming or video editing, was that I committed using my mouse to muscle memory, for example, and I was not using key bindings as much as I wanted to. It's kind of interesting how these habits that we need to really develop take a lot of effort, but if you make a little improvement every day, it really compounds, and you pay the short-term price for really good long-term gain. There's this notion of two ways of how we think. First is the very autonomous system, and the second is the very deep reflective system. And our automatic system really wants to just reach for the mouse, and for example, and go to the effect panel, look for effects, for example. Okay, where's my effect? Type in lumetri color. You get the example, right? And then, okay, let me apply it to my clip. So that took you a lot of work, but your knee-jerk reaction, you automatically just reach for the mouse and go for it. Your system too needs to take a break and kind of look at the big picture and kind of make more like a logical decision of okay, well, if I apply this effect all the time, maybe it's worth, automating it or assigning it to a shortcut so that it makes it a lot easier and it doesn't take you out of workflow. So you really need to stop for a second, really commit hard to actually use key bindings, because trust me, our urge is always to grab the mouse and click things, and because we're so visual, we just want to click it. It's more obvious. And key bindings are a little bit more abstract and it's very hard. So what I recommend to kind of cultivate a really good habit is to reduce the amount of friction. So a practical way to do this is to actually have a cheat sheet. So what I've done is actually created a shortcut to a cheat sheet for my keyboard shortcuts. And here you can see these are all my very commonly used shortcuts that I really want to commit to memory, and I'm trying to make a habit out of it. So every time I do an action, I kind of okay, well, do I really need to use a mouse for this? Can I use a keyboard shortcut, or can I create a new keyboard shortcut? And really think about what commands are you doing very often, and just write them down and then assign them shortcuts and then commit that to memory. And trust me, over a couple of years, you're going to be just way more proficient at video editing, and it's going to save you a lot of frustration and time. So how exactly do you do a keyboard shortcut? Well, ironically, to get to the settings page to actually assign keyboard
shortcuts, you probably want to assign that to a keyboard shortcut. Now, I think the default one is Control-Alt-K, and this will bring you to the actual place where all your shortcuts are done. And what I really like about this interface is that it's actually quite intuitive to set up your key binding. So what I can do is hold Shift. You can see that the layout changes. If I highlight over, you can see that what exactly is binded to Shift and then Q. And when I let go of Q, you can see that Q is assigned to different types of commands. So using your modifier keys is going to give you a lot of real estate, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So try to learn maybe 3 or 4 at a time and try not to go crazy and learn like 10 different shortcuts, because trust me, you're going to be a little bit demotivated if you can't remember them all on the first try. Now, there are so many shortcuts I use day to day, and you really need to kind of start editing and see what you use. But personally, if I had to name 3 shortcuts that will literally save you a tons of time and that you should do automatically and right away, it would have to be these ones. The first one is Q. Now, what is Q? So if I click on it, you can see what does it do. It does this really complicated thing called ripple trim previous edit to playhead. So, okay, what exactly does that mean? We'll find out a little bit later. And then W, it's ripple trim next edit to playhead. Okay, so what does that do? We'll talk about that later. And then finally S, which it was typically assigned to L, but L is on the other side of the keyboard. It's on the right side of the keyboard. Like I said, I want to keep as many key bindings on the right side, or sorry, on the left side, so that I don't have to take my hand off my mouse and move it to the other side of the keyboard. That makes it really awkward. So I move this key binding L to here. So what does S do? It does shuttle right. The last 2 essential keyboard shortcuts are customized to my liking, and that's Z for add edit and X for ripple delete. So typically when you're editing, you're going to be using these 5 key combinations to speed up your process. So I'm going to hit the play button, hit the space bar, and it's going to be playing at a normal speed. If I hit S, and by default it's L, but I moved it to S. If I hit S, it's going to speed up the playback.
Okay, so let's say we do
S.
make the mistake of not cutting the footage from here.
S. So as you hear and see, it increases the playback speed. So this makes it a lot easier to scrub through footage and kind of just move the timeline a little bit faster. So what happens when you want to start cutting footage? Well, a new person to Adobe Premiere might do the very slow method of going to their command menu over here. Let's say they want to ripple delete or cut a tool. So they use the razor tool. They mark it here, then they select the clip, then hit delete, then do ripple delete. And that was all done with the mouse and the keyboard and using the kind of UI over here. So that's a lot of kind of pointless labor work, and you can do it in a much more efficient way using keyboard shortcuts. And I'm going to talk about an even better way later in this video on how to completely eliminate having to do this work. But in this case, let's say I want to cut it over here. I will use the Z command, and this is going to add an edit. And then I will use the Q command to trim everything to the left of this playhead. The playhead is this thing that moves around. So I'm going to place it right here and hit Q. And then as you can see, everything to the left is deleted. So we can trim to the left, but we can also trim to the right. So let's say I add an edit over here. I move the cursor to the left and I use W, which will trim everything to the right of this, and it deletes it. So W deletes it. Now we can do something similar. Let's say we hit Z again, and then say we hit Z again here. Let's say we want to ripple delete this clip for whatever reason. You can use the shortcut X in my case to ripple delete. So those are the 5 keyboard shortcuts that I use every day for every type of clip, and it's going to make your editing workflow a lot faster.
So we're at the end of this video. I hope it convinced you that keyboard shortcuts is definitely worth it for any type of office work, especially for Adobe Premiere where you're doing video editing. Now, it does take a lot of patience and upfront commitment, but I think just, spending 1 hour, 2 hours initially just to configure your keyboard shortcuts to your liking and find the ones that you really want and hone down and just learn them. Upfront, it's going to be a big investment, but it's going to pay off in the long term. Thanks for watching this video. If you do liked it, please do give a like. It really helps the channel. And let me know if you have any questions or comments about this type of topic. I'd be very happy to answer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.